Hi, this is Jarish. Welcome to Ekascloud. In this webinar, you will see about Apache virtual hosting. First of all, I'll tell what is virtual hosting. Then we will see how to configure virtual hosting in Red Hat Enterprise Linux system. In my previous webinar, I have told you what is Apache Web Server. Web Server is a software which runs on an operating system which allows you to serve websites. Let's say you're an enterprise and your company needs to host lot of websites. If that's the case, you need multiple physical servers. You need operating systems in that physical servers. Above that, you need to again have softwares in each of the physical server. If you go for dedicated hardware for each and every websites you configure, then the investment is going to be huge. So if you have websites which is going to receive less traffic, you can configure multiple websites on a single web server box. That is called virtual hosting. Let's say you have a lot of websites which is not going to receive lot of traffic, then you can have just one hardware. Above that, you can have an operating system. You can configure Apache software to run multiple websites for same domain or for different domain. This is called virtual hosting. So I'll show you how to configure virtual hosting within a Red Hat Enterprise Linux operating system with Apache. I'll connect to the server from my Windows PC and then we'll build virtual hosting from scratch. So this Linux operating system is like a newly installed Linux operating system. So now I'm going to configure Apache software and we'll also configure virtual hosting. So the first step would be you have to install Apache software. So in Red Hat Enterprise Linux, it is HTTPD. If you have followed my previous webinar, I have told you just after installing HTTPD software in a Linux system, there will be configuration file which is /etc httpd/conf/httpd.conf and /etc/conf.d. Inside that, anything finishing with .conf is a configuration file. So these files will get created, and these files, this main configuration file will point the default website location, which is considered as document root, as /var www.html. I'm just informing that this configuration file will get created, and this configuration file will have a configuration pointing to the website location as /var www.html. But in today's configuration, I am not going to place a website in the default location. I'll be using two different folders. Because I'm going to configure virtual hosting, it's going to be two websites. So I'll create two new document root. Document root is the location where the website content resides. But just after installation, if you want to check the configuration file, which is /etc httpd conf /httpd.conf, there will be a line with the document root which is pointing to the location /var www.html. This is the default location of the website content, but today we are not going to use this location. So we have did one step, which is we installed Apache software. Now HTTP with port number 80 is not yet enabled in this server, so you have to start and enable service. So if I use the command systemctl status httpd, Apache HTTP service is not running and it's not enabled. So I'll use systemctl start and systemctl enable command to start Apache. Apache service now listens on port number 80. Now HTTP protocol with port number 80 is enabled. From internet, if request is initiated to this server, if there is firewall running within the operating system, that will block the traffic. So the third step I'm going to do is I'll allow HTTP traffic via firewall. I'll check whether firewall D service is running. If the service is not running, then you don't need to allow firewall. Because this service is running, in order to access Apache websites, you need to allow port number 80. If I use firewall-cmd -list-all under services, as of now there is no HTTP. I'll use this command firewall-cmd -add-service equal to HTTP to add HTTP service to the firewall role list. I'll reload firewall to take it to the runtime. Now if I list the firewall role list, you can see HTTP traffic is allowed. Which means now from internet, if this website is accessed with the URL, this is going to serve the default website content. can see the test page. But like I said, we are not going to place any website in the default path, which is /var www.html, because I am going to make this server as a virtual hosting server. I am going to create two directories. One is with the name site1 and another is with the name site2. So the fourth step would be create document root. Document root is the location of the website content. Because it's going to be a virtual hosting, I'm creating two directories with the name site1 and site2. But this directory doesn't have any websites. So I'm going to upload sample websites which I have in my local computer. So I have already created a folder with the name site1 and site2 in my local computer, and I also have a sample website. So the site1's website is just going to show the image 1.jpg, and site2's index.html is configured to show the image 2.jpg. And I have already established a WinSCP session to the server, which I am configuring as Apache. Just we have created two folders with the name site1 and site2. If I refresh, you will be able to see site1 and site2. Now from my local computer, I'll be uploading the sample website for site1. So maybe I don't have proper permission. Let me just copy to the home directory, then I'll move it to the appropriate directory. So now I have uploaded a file with the name index.html and 1.jpg. So if you look into the index.html, it will just have a very simple configuration with the content welcome, this is site1, and that is going to show the image 1.jpg. Now I'll move this index.html and 1.jpg file to site1. I'll remove it from the home directory. Now I'll again upload the second sample website, which is index.html and 2.jpg, to home directory, and this time I will move it to site2 directory. Okay. So here in this place we have created two directories, one with the name site1 and another with the name site2, and because it's a remote server, from my local computer, for the folder site1 I copied a sample website, and for the directory site2 I again copied a sample website. Now both this site1 and site2 directories has sample website inside it. Site1 has index.html and its related file. Site2 has its own index.html and its related file. So we created two directories and we also placed website, but we have not configured Apache in such a way to fetch the websites from either site1 or site2. So after creating the document root, we placed website. Now I'm going to configure Apache in such a way to fetch the website from both site1 and site2. In order to do this configuration, it has two ways. One, you can edit the main configuration file and you can append the configuration for site1 and site2, or you can create a separate configuration file for site1 and separate configuration file for site2 in the supplementary directory. I'll go with the first way. I'll edit the main configuration file. I'll just append the configuration related to site1 and site2. We have already seen in this configuration file that the document root is pointing to the default location /var www.html, but we have not placed any website on that. I'll now just go to the last of the line and I'll create a separate section for site1, and I'm going to add virtual host related configuration for site1. It is a XML based configuration. We have to say virtual host and in which IP address the website has to listen. In my case, I'm going to configure both my websites to listen on the same IP address. So only it is going to get differentiated with the name. So we call it as name based virtual hosting. So I'll say *:80. This means any IP address in this server is going to listen for the port number 80. And I'll use the name of the server as site1.jerish.net because I have a public domain with the name jerish.net. So I'll go with site1. And if from internet, if the clients access with this domain, from which document root the content has to be shared, that has to be configured. So I'll say document root as /site1 and I'll close this section. And also you need to give permission for site1 in Apache. So I'll create another section with directory site1 and I'll say require all granted. This means that anybody requesting to this folder will be granted with the content. Yeah, this is a very simple configuration for the first virtual host which I am configuring. There can be a lot of other configuration, but for this webinar I'll just go with this basic configuration. So now I'll do the configuration for the second website. I'll again say virtual host, listen on all the IP addresses and port number 80, same port number. Like I said already, it's going to be differentiated only with the name. So this time I'll give a different name, which is site2.jerish.net. and I'll say the document root to fetch the content from site 2 folder. Now we'll configure the permission section. Right. This is not a configuration to keep it in the mind and do. So you can look into the documentation and configure this virtual hosting. Now I have configured, I have edited this configuration file for reading the content from site 1 and site 2. Now I'll save this configuration. After editing the configuration file in Apache, to verify whether there is any syntax errors, there is a command called httpd-t. I think there is a typo. Let me again. Right. So it should be virtual host. Now again verify the syntax. Now the syntax says it's okay. Now once after doing the configuration, you have to restart the service. But because this Linux server is running with SC Linux, it will not allow you to access the content which is placed in a different working directory other than your default path for your website. So either you have to manage the SC Linux labels for this directory, or you need to temporarily disable SC Linux. So I'll temporarily make SC Linux in permissive mode. So I'll say set enforce 0. This is going to make SC Linux in permissive mode, and now I'll restart the service. So these are the 7 configurations you have to do to make a basic virtual hosting. Now, because it is just one server, but you have configured 2 different websites, you need to register the name which you have entered in the configuration file. So because I have a public domain with the name jerish.net, I'll be creating a record for the server which is running on this public IP address. One public address, but it's going to be 2 different names. So I'll click on create record. Because I have configured with the name site1.jerish.net, so first I'll create a record to resolve site1.jerish.net for this IP address, and again I'll create one more record for site2.jerish.net with the same public IP address. So now I have in total 3 names pointing to the same IP address, so where we have configured virtual hosting. Now if you access with the name site1.jerish.net, you will be able to access the content which we placed in the directory /site1. Yeah, it says welcome, this is site1. And if you use site2.jerish.net, you will be able to access the content which we placed in /site2 directory. So this is the sample page which I have uploaded to slash site1 and slash site2. So now I have shown you how to configure virtual hosting in Apache. We'll end this webinar with this. Thank you.